This case takes place in the United Kingdom on Christmas Day 2010. Christie Bamu was a 15-year-old lad who was born and raised in France. He lived with his parents in Paris, and by all accounts, he was just a regular young man who enjoyed the things typical of his age. He had a very promising future, as his father owned a successful woodworking and furniture company in Paris. His father hoped that one day he would take over the family business. Kristy had a number of siblings, and one of these siblings was Christie Bamu. She was born in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1983 and was Kristy's older sister. When Christie was 13, she was sent to live with her mother's niece and her husband in England, East London. It's reported that she suffered a great deal at the hands of her carers. She was treated like a servant. She was forced to cook, clean, and look after the children of her new carers, and was not allowed to go to school. When she was old enough, however, she moved out and got away. She then signed up for a number of courses, learning how to read and basic mathematics, working as a domestic cleaner to support herself. She found work as a dental nurse before meeting a man by the name of Eric. The couple met through a mutual friend and they began a relationship. At first, she found Eric to be incredibly nice and she described him as protective. But before too long, Christie said that he became very controlling, not allowing her to wear makeup, have friends, or go out alone. He would call her all manner of derogatory names and would even make her eat off the floor with no plates. This disturbing behavior escalated and he soon began beating her. Eric was born in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 1983. His mother died during childbirth and he lived with his father, who was a gold trader. Eric had a rather disturbing belief, a belief that was drilled into him during his time in Congo. He believed in something called kindoki, a type of demonic witchcraft. He believed that evil spirits were indeed real and had a belief of how someone possessed with these evil spirits should be dealt with. Eric was a keen football coach who had plans to start his own academy. But despite these ambitions, those who knew him stated that he was obsessed with witchcraft and sorcery, believing that he was fighting an ongoing battle against witchcraft. Eric told his friends that the threat of black magic haunted him, and he had visions of his own brother entering his room at night and trying to kill him. He said that these visions felt very much real, and they scared him a great deal. In December of 2010, plans were made for Kristy and his other siblings to visit their big sister in London. He was accompanied by his older brother Yves, his older sister Kelly, and his two younger siblings who could not be named for legal reasons. They arrived in London and made their way to Christie's home. Things were going well. Christie and Eric had just gotten engaged, and Eric's plans for a football academy were coming to fruition. But not long into the visit, things took a truly horrific turn. Kristy desperately needed the toilet. However, the door to the bathroom was broken and he couldn't get the door open. This resulted in Kristy wetting himself. He was deeply embarrassed at what had happened, and so he decided to hide his pants until they dried out. But the following day, Eric was looking for something in the house when he stumbled upon Kristy's pants that was soaked with urine. The usual reaction might be that of sympathy towards the teenage boy, but not for the witchcraft-obsessed Eric, who took this as a sign that Kristy was possessed by some kind of demon and was attempting to possess the whole house with a spell. Eric became angry and began accusing the visitor siblings of practicing witchcraft in his home. Eric and Christie forced the siblings to say prayers throughout the day and night in the language of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and did this to remove the kindoki. They were denied food and sleep and were prevented from going to the toilet. One of the siblings, named Kelly, later said, "I repeated again and again that we weren't witches, and that we had just come to spend Christmas as a family together. I don't know what was going on in their minds. They decided that we were there to kill them." For 4 days, the couple attacked the siblings, beating them with all manner of blunt instruments. These included a metal bar, a hammer, and a chisel. They told the siblings that they needed to do this so they would be able to rid them of any demons. The focus, however, was mainly directed at Kristy, as he was the one who had wet his pants. Eric said to Kristy, "Since you don't want to tell me the truth, I'm going to get the truth out of you with a stick." Eric grabbed Kristy and inserted a metal bar into his mouth. He then used a hammer to hammer the metal bar into his mouth. Kristy was repeatedly struck in the face with the hammer too, causing a great deal of damage to his facial bones. The siblings would later recall that his face was completely disfigured and he was almost unrecognizable. A pair of pliers were also used. Eric clamped down on Kristy's ears and wrenched the tool, shredding up Kristy's ears. The pliers and the hammer were also used to remove and knock out some of Kristy's teeth. The hammer and chisel were used in unison and used to hack into Kristy's bone and skin. This happened for days. Unrelenting, brutal torture. Eric forced the siblings to hold down Kristy, whilst he smashed glass bottles and ceramic tiles over his head, causing deep cuts to the back of his head and neck. Eric then called Kristy's father back in Paris, telling him that he needed to come and collect his demonic son, for if he didn't, he would kill him. Kristy's father immediately looked for flights and trains to London from Paris, but it was the Christmas season and he struggled to find a way to get there. Kristy called his father too, telling him that he feared that Eric would kill him, but before his father could get there, it would be too late. Kelly would later say that throughout the days of horrific attacks, Kristy asked for forgiveness. He asked again and again, but his sister Magali did absolutely nothing to stop Eric from attacking him. In fact, she encouraged the violence. She showed no care. She said that they all deserved what they were getting. Their big sister, who was supposed to protect them, did the complete opposite. After days of relentless attacks, Kristy begged to be killed. He could no longer take the extreme and gruesome punishments being inflicted upon him. He became too weak to even defend himself. Kristy refused to admit that he was a witch or was practicing any form of black magic, something that Eric continuously demanded he do. The more Kristy refused to admit to something that he didn't do, the more violent Eric became. Finally, on Christmas Day, Eric dragged Kristy and the other siblings to the bathroom and forced them to stand in the bath. He used freezing water to cleanse them in some kind of ritual. As the bath filled up with water, Eric turned his attention to Kristy again. His siblings were forced to watch as Eric recited verses about God and submerged Kristy in cold water. It was on this day that Kristy was finally killed. The emergency services were called to the flat, where they discovered the horrific scene. Kristy had been beaten with such force that blood spatters were found all over the house, all over the walls and even the ceiling. Broken tiles covered in blood were found in a bin bag, along with an array of tools used as torture devices. Kristy was found in the bathtub, beaten to a degree that horrified even the most seasoned police officers. The siblings were questioned about what had happened, and Eric and Magali were arrested. As news of Kristy spread, those from the Congo but living in the UK were asked about Kindoki by the media. Many people stated that the belief in Kindoki is as widespread among those Congolese people living in the UK as it is in the Congo. They said that a number of Christian churches run by Congolese ministers have been established, where leaders of the denomination tell people about the dangers of evil spirits and encourage others not to watch movies such as Harry Potter, as they believe that demons could come through the television and possess their children. The churches that push this aren't overly common, but they do exist, and tragically, they have led to some being harmed and killed. Kristy was the third person in the UK at the time to be killed due to the belief in Kindoki. It is also feared that thousands of younger people could be facing horrific attacks because their relatives believe they are witches or possessed by evil spirits in the UK. Think tanks have been set up by the government in hopes to tackle the issue. The trial of Eric and Magali would begin in 2012. During the proceedings, Eric showed little emotion. The jury was shown images of what is considered to be one of the worst cases in British history. Images of Christie's body were shown, as they were told in sickening detail about how the injuries were inflicted and how the boy had begged to be killed. Christie had suffered over 130 separate injuries to his body, with many of them being incredibly severe. As these harrowing details were shared, Eric is reported to have turned to those sitting near him, smiling, and made a couple of jokes. Eric's defense team entered a guilty plea to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. They argued that since Eric had been arrested, he had gone through a number of mental health evaluations. Eric, who was 25 at the time, had been diagnosed with a schizophrenia-like brain disease. They argued that this disease was likely to cause hallucinations and delusions, claiming that this disease caused Eric to act out in such a violent manner, and that during the whole ordeal, he believed what he was doing was for the best, and that Christie couldn't feel anything due to him being possessed by a demon. Eric claimed that he suffered a head injury in his youth and was isolated by his father. He claimed that these two things led him to experience strange visions, and used this to absolve him from any responsibility. The prosecution, however, insisted that Eric be tried for murder, arguing that it was his belief in witchcraft that had led him to torture and kill Christie. The prosecution presented evidence that Eric believed he was the chosen one, with a special ability to sense aspects of other people's character and spirits. During the trial, it had come out that Eric had done something similar before, but nowhere near to the same extent. A family friend named Naomi had stayed with the couple for a month in August of 2008. Eric became convinced that she was possessed by some kind of demon. He threw away everything that Naomi had touched, including clothing and cutlery. He wouldn't allow Naomi to eat for 3 days and told her to pray. He forced her to shave her head to release the witchcraft. Naomi also claimed that Eric had beaten her too. Christie's sister, Kelly, gave evidence against the couple. She broke down a number of times when she recalled the series of events that led to her brother's brutal death. She said, "It is very traumatic to see these things. Christie's face was completely disfigured. Eric just carried on, and Magali saw it all." In the courtroom, Kelly repeatedly shouted at her sister Magali, who kept her head bowed. Kelly said her sister punched her in the face and did nothing to stop the vicious beatings of her brother and siblings. Pointing at her sister in the dock, she shouted, "Christie is dead. He's not here anymore. They should have to undergo the same thing that happened to Christie. Magali deserves to die for what they did to us. I have no pity for her, as she had no pity for us." Magali broke down a number of times during the trial. She was asked if she intended to kill her brother, and she replied, "Never. He's my brother and I loved him. I did what I did because I was forced to do it. What happened, I could not stop." However, Kelly refuted this and stated, "I'm sure she still believes, even to this day, that we are witches. I begged Magali. I said, 'We haven't done anything, and you're going to let your boyfriend hit us, and he has no right to do so,' but she just didn't care." Eric and Magali were both found guilty of the murder of Christie. The judge told Eric that he accepted that his mental damage may have made him more inclined to believe that Christie was a witch, but went on to say, "The belief in witchcraft, however genuine, cannot excuse an attack on another person, let alone killing another human being." He also told Magali that he did not accept that Eric forced her to attack Christie. He stated that she was a willing participant. The judge sentenced Eric to life in prison with a minimum term of 30 years. Magali was sentenced to life too, with a minimum term of 25 years. The case of Christie was so unimaginably disturbing, gruesome and cruel that those on the jury who had to see the photograph of Christie's dead body are exempt from ever taking part in another jury trial again. They were deeply traumatized by what they had to witness and hear. The case is considered to be one of the very worst in British legal history. To think that someone who was just 15 was expecting a Christmas with his big sister ended up begging to be killed is just beyond horrific, and many details of this case left me lost for words and deeply disturbed.